Hi and welcome to the Aaron Russos podcast. Today's episode is just going to be a little bit of an introduction to probably the craft or the modality or whatever you want to call it that I know best. If I had to think about something that I have a greater understanding of in life that I feel supremely confident to share with you better than anyone else on the planet is my own little, thing that I love and have cherished and done all of my life nearly, which is numerology. And to go back 34 years ago or something, 35 years ago, my introduction to numerology was meeting a man by the name of Mark Gruner. Mark Gruner was the numbers science guy from Harvard for over 30 years, and he was also dealing with what they call the energy in numbers, and that was also used to translate ancient symbols and words and things into modern day translations of energy. And so he gave me a one-pager. Okay, so I asked him, I overheard, he used to come into my dad's restaurant and cafe in Noosa. And I was a teenager, and I overheard him talking to some lady, and it was around the time of the spring carnival, and some lady was asking him something about numerology with the spring carnival, and there was a great horse. I don't know if you're into horse racing or not, but you probably know the greats, and it was an 8-day, and he goes, well, I think it was, I don't know if it was the Cox Plate or something, really 8 days, you got to back octagonal, wouldn't you? And sure enough, that was the start of like, well, I can win money by knowing numerology, and then obviously he said to me, "Oh, I'm writing a book." That's the whole thing. I finished up and I moved to Australia because there's another gentleman, a friend of his here called Eric Brown, who is based on the Gold Coast, and they were going to write a book together called Your Numbers, Your Life. And it was based on their passions. They finished their university lives and they were going to do a book on Pythagorean numerology. And so this was something that profoundly changed their lives over the course of their life and enabled them to have a better life and experience a lot more and be aware of a lot more here. So he wasn't into teaching anyone. He wasn't really into doing numerology readings and charts. That wasn't where he was at in his life. In fact, he was quite happy to do the book, but for those who, knew him on a personal level, and he loves my dad's cooking, obviously, he used to come in quite a lot. He did a one-pager for me. And on the one-pager, it had my name, and every letter in my name had a number. They broke down into a soul number, a destiny number, an outer personality number. And the soul number can also be seen as a destiny number. A heart's desire, number. And there was, little relevant snippets and extensions of everything within it. My life path number, which is a little bit like my theme of my life, which is all your numbers individually added up in a date of birth, and then added until you get a single number, unless it's 11, 22 or 33. So my life path number was a 7. And so that was a lot of information about that theme, and within that there was a whole lot of characteristics, positive and negative. And then I said, what's this, negative? And he said, well, look, we're all not all positive or all negative. We flip between the two depending on what's going on in our lives and what we can handle and what we're being overwhelmed with. And sometimes you might be sarcastic. It's a defense mechanism based on some people get stubborn and stay in the negative characteristics a little bit longer than they like to. or expressing them, and then we eventually come around and we flip back to the positive. And I said, oh wow, that's fascinating. And he said, well, yeah, well, it's part of the duality of life. He said there's 7 million species of animal and plant life out there, and everything has the yin and the yang, the male and the female, the duality of life. And even when Mother Nature, something in nature that has the duality reaches full expression, right, which is something, you'd have to go and study this in a deeper sense to understand what I'm talking about. But Mother Nature then makes another variety once it reaches full expression of obviously nutrients, spectrums, growth, you know what I mean? When it's at its absolute fullest, and it doesn't have anywhere to move or to grow or to expand, it makes another species as a form of love within the universe. And I was like, wow. So that's where we get different varieties in nature. And I'm just totally blown away by this point. And then he said, but while there's those 12 houses, those themes, those like the 12 houses in astrology, our cousin, we then have this thing called the natal chart, which is more exclusive to Pythagoras, this system. And he said, and then you break it up between your mind, soul and emotion, physical, material, thought, will, action, compassion, and determination. And these are energies in numbers, but these are on a pattern that the numbers that are on this chart give you natural skills, talents, abilities, and energies and characteristics. And the numbers that are not there are things that you have to develop over a lifetime. You have to fill in the gaps. You have to grow. They might be a life lesson. And so we're all using all the other numbers within our chart, trying to balance this natal chart. By this stage, I'm completely blown away. This guy is just, pretty much he's presenting the blueprint of my soul, the way that the universe would see me, right? And then he's like, but if you add up today's date and get a single number till it becomes a single number, he said, it'll go 1 to 9, 1 to 9, 1 to 9, 1 to 9. He goes, so these cycles keep repeating throughout the whole life, and you can throw the master numbers in there as well as an extension of the single number, right, of something a little bit more emphasis. And he said, and what you'll find is that the cycle's energy is the same, but each time we go round, we've learned something new and expanded ourselves, so it means something different to each and every one of us. And now I'm totally seriously, Mark. And then he said, but then you can actually do cycles with you as a personal person in your personal year cycles, personal month cycles, and personal day cycles. And this is all woven into each other. And I'm like, wow. So you could actually know how people would react in a certain situation, or, it's like predicting. It's like he called it a sixth sense. And I was like, wow. Excuse me. That's when I knew this. I don't know how it came into my life. I don't know how, and I'm not really interested in working it out, but I knew from that moment onwards that this was going to be part of my life for a very long time. And, you fast forward 13 years later, for the first time, when my son was born, I put on his birth certificate, father's occupation, numerologist. Now, it wasn't numerologist / this, it wasn't, it was just straight numerologist. And obviously, you need to become supremely confident that you have enough knowledge at a higher level to be able to get to this point. And it's all through study and growth. It's not like going to a university and being handed a title or a diploma or double doctorate or something. And so it was really fascinating. Obviously, I was always a student. I still am a student of numerology. And so I never wanted to be that guy that charged for it. I was happy to do this and share this information with other people as part of my own personal study. So Mark, the only really lessons we had were about the energy in numbers and each individual number. And so the school part of it for me was him explaining, all right, one, there's an empty room and there's one chair in the room. What do you think the characteristics, the energy of one is? And I'll be like, Mark, oh, mate, you really like, because in this stage I was quite, new. And he's like, all right, we haven't got emotional guidance system. We know how things make us feel. We know what we see. And so there's this push-pull energy of projecting, of taking back in through our senses. And he's taking me on a journey of how they would actually, just all back to the mechanics again of life. So he's like, but there's only one chair. There's nothing to compare it to. So it's quite confident, forceful, original. If there's only one chair, it is original, right? There's nothing to compare it to. And I was like, wow. And he goes, you remember the 7 million species? They all have the yin and yang, so that one chair is no different. So the negative of that chair might be the opposite. It might be a perverted, manipulated, negatively intended version of it. And he said, so powerful, confident, forceful becomes lazy, dogmatic, selfish. And so we start to get the yin yang in the characteristics of all these numbers. And then you know what someone is, their core energy is, it's a theme part of their life. Then you're not most likely to know how they would react. And human beings are very, very predictable. And so he goes, well, you put two chairs. Now there's two sides to the story. So it's not thinking singular anymore. It's not original anymore. And so you'd have to, it's a different energy to be able to, being considerate to another chair. And so each of these numbers as you go along have different energies and different characteristics applied to them. And they're littered throughout all our lives. And so I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And then he's like, well, I got a bit of a disclaimer. And I'm like, what? What do you mean a disclaimer? And he goes, well, it's not just that simple and straightforward as that's, you're doing that and becoming a prophet and prophesizing and telling people where they're going and where they're headed and stuff because of a couple of things in life. And I was like, okay. So this is another level. So he said, well, human beings on the planet, we are influenced by our teachers, our peers, TV, parents, and so therefore human conditioning becomes a play. So we might have a desensitized, or we might not. We might have an identity crisis because our parents might expect us to be a certain way, or to be a certain student, or to be like them. And so they're conditioning us all the time. And then society's conditioning us. Then the TV's conditioning us. And that's where all this misunderstanding of who we actually are comes from. And you might go on in life and then later in life start questioning things, going, hang on a minute, who am I? Why do I feel like this? Why don't I feel like this is my identity? And so that one such factor needs to be taken into consideration when doing someone's chart, or when doing their numerology or their blueprint. They're given a blueprint, it's got energy, but that energy can be manipulated because we're human beings in a land of duality that have within that duality a gift. Now, a lot of you have thought that this duality is not a gift. You've thought it's light versus dark, evil versus good, and you think it's a fight. But duality is actually a gift to say that you have free will. And so that's the other factor that he said. We all have free will, so it doesn't even matter what I tell you in your numerology reading. You can do whatever you want and be whatever you want and have whatever you want. That is not a stuck in stone document. If I say you're reserved, analytical, and dignified, which are your three main core characteristics, you, if you want to, using your intent, can simply change that. You might have a set of natural skills, talents, and abilities, but you can learn anything. There is no limits to what you can learn, to what you can become on this planet. And it is littered throughout history. It is proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And that fact is out there for everybody that is human. It has got nothing to do with intelligence, streets. It's got nothing. Every human being has that ability. Most of the choice, when you have free choice, we don't understand because mentally we've been limited, and we've had those choices mentally taken away from us to be able to market to us, for us to be able to be dependent on a system. So my first one-page numerology chart that shifted something in me, that made a change for me to go looking for the answers to life, to a bit of a quest to find out the reason why we're here, what system are we part of, and how we work in it, has been a long one, but so rewarding. And when I first got my chart, some of the stuff I intuitively knew that I was like that, but it's still nice to be reminded, because the world doesn't remind you of how amazing you are. The world will tell you all the bad things, and it'll tell you how shit you are, and it'll wear away at your worthiness and self-esteem and confidence and things like that. The world is very good at doing that, because that's a cultural thing. That's part of human conditioning. But as far as even just looking at who you are, to your favorite subject, and you go, wow, I am. And we don't take enough time to reflect on all the beautiful things that we are. And if we did, you would be a lot happier with your lot, with your life, and with yourself. And so for me, the first thing that numerology reading did for me was it gave me a good insight to a negative side. And some of the things that I was negative about, negative characteristics, some of the things that were there, I was doing quite often. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize I was such a negative person. I was such a person that used to make fun of other people or be sarcastic. And so it enables you to change what you don't like about yourself as well. Now, back then, in the very early stages, in the trenches, really, really young, one of the first things I did was I did a research study into subconscious reprogramming, because I had these things and I was like that, and I didn't like that about myself, but I had to get rid of it. So I had to understand the mechanics as a teenager, while life's going on and I'm living in a house with all these surf grommets in Noosa going surfing every day. That I didn't surf, by the way. We're all partying, and it was a real party house and all the rest of it. And here I am making tapes on remember the old cassette tapes? Messages to myself to play as I fell asleep to reprogram my subconscious. Now, back in the old days, it's probably the same today. It was repetition. Repetition was a way to, one, you've got to identify when that pops up and you're being like something you don't want to and all the rest of it. And then repetition of identifying and then being aware, and then obviously trying to transmute it or diffuse it or whatever you want to say. You've got to wipe the program before you can lay in the new program of the computer. And so this numerology was taking me on another journey down to subconscious reprogramming. It gave me an understanding about us and the whole journey and what it was about. But I still had to live in the other world, and which you're all probably stuck in right now. And I went on and over the years, different things and different people would present at different times. In the late 90s, I met a gentleman who came into my restaurant. He said, in Port Douglas, and he said, "Oh, mate, I love your energy." I'm 24 or something, 23. And he said, "I've got this product that I'm importing into the country called barley green." And he said, if you take a teaspoon of it every day in some liquid, after a month, your body increases its white blood cells, and they're the ones that you want for fighting disease. It's very useful, because he was a former cancer patient. And so he was one of the early, pioneers of naturally healing his own cancer. And I said, well, even though I was a manager of the restaurant at the time, because my dad was cooking, I said, well, I'm a chef. And I said, I heavily believe, and at the moment I'd just done subconscious reprogramming. I said, I'm looking into foodism, food as medicine. And we're talking like 27 years ago, 28 years ago. And he said, well, maybe we could combine the two and get a better result again. So what we did was we found a supplement and a natural, juicing, smoothie, natural food regime together was, and obviously we're just like doctors, we're going to test things. So we would get a cancer patient that was having chemo and radiation or treatment or both, and we would get them to rate, their last experience and how they felt afterwards, energetically, mentally, cognition, and all these things. And then we would give them this diet, and then they would have treatment and have the diet and the supplement during their treatment. And before, they were reporting 2 out of 10 on average across many things. And afterwards, they were reporting 7 and 8. They were feeling like that treatment was hardly even affecting them. And we all know that these things are killing cells and all that sort of stuff, because it's killing the bad cells, but it also, affects the good ones. And so right there and then we had an amazing thing in combination that was going to change the world. Like now there's 1 billion people with cancer in this world. And so that one thing was going to change the quality of their life throughout this treatment. And what happened back then was my first awakening, or first understanding of how the world works, and that was that this product that he was bringing in got banned. A natural substance, can't bring it into the country. And so he went down the path of looking to make his own, grow his own barley and here in Australia, and that's great, but he's never sort of got anywhere since. And at the time I was still had a 20-year condition myself that I was dealing with, that no doctor could help me with, that was quite life-limiting in itself, as far as I couldn't get a license, I couldn't travel alone, and there was a whole lot of other things that's quite well documented. And obviously I had also some traumas, and those traumas were making me triggered and react and move around a lot more than I would if I wasn't so triggered. So that sort of diffused, but that was another part of my life, another season, another piece to go on with. I then, with the numerology, a few years later, my son was born and I got all responsible, thought that I have to get a job and play the game and try and earn as much as money as possible to provide for a family. And so I went off on that journey for it was about 5 years in total. So I sort of left the numerology behind, but I would still dabble in it a little bit for people, because it's pretty cool when you're in a corporate job and someone says something like, oh, do numerology, that'll help with that, or you know what I mean? And so I was still done, but I wasn't immersed. I wasn't growing in that part of my life. But I started off, in the corporate world, working in one job, and head chef here, 55,000. Next one, 75,000, and the head chef at the entertainment centre. Then executive chef of all these venues, and went into convention centres and major events, and I started growing, and I got up to like $130,000, and making more money than I ever thought. And someone who couldn't even pass year 7 at school, it meant quite a lot to me to it was quite emotional to even get to that stage in life. And I've got a son, and it's a great example to him, and everything's going amazing, and I get recognized worldwide. I'm doing workforce development strategies. I'm winning awards that I could only dream of, and in the field that I've been in my whole life, and gold plates and all sorts of stuff. And one day I get to work and I jump in the lift and I have a panic attack, and it starts my whole untangling of this whole world and life that I'd been part of, that I got to such great heights. And so then, what followed was 10 years of absolute heartbreak, sickness, disease, not even leaving my apartment for a year. And so it took me off on the healing, and then I had to bring back in the numerology and the foodison and all the things and work out the mechanics of life. And I still couldn't work it out. And it wasn't until 2018, I'd had enough. And it was about April, I didn't even want to be here anymore. And I thought, if I have to wake up, it's like people with chronic pain. It doesn't matter what drug you take. Doesn't matter how much of you take. It doesn't matter the combination of prescription drugs, alcohol, marijuana, Valium, everything, all at once, and you still can't get rid of this pain. And I was quite happy not to be here anymore. I thought, I can't do it anymore. I can't get up to this utter thing. And so I even went to my doctor and I said, mate, I'm a zombie, mate. My family don't even recognize me, And he said, oh, mate, these drug companies say you have to take those drugs for the rest of your life now. They've changed something within you. And I got even more angry. And this is where this whole journey for me took off. So it started embedded in numerology, which is a lifelong thing that I've had. And then, I pretty much had all the pieces and parts as I was going along. But the one last thing that happened in that 2014 was that spirituality part. And I guess that's what all the most greatest minds on earth have all been missing. Whether it be, Darwin, whether it be Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking, greatest, amazing. I've studied the guy for many years, a big fan. All he had to do was mix a little bit of spirituality with what he had and test it and prove it. And he would have had the whole lot, the whole shooting match. And he's up there now helping me, and I've got memes that have him saying, oh my God, I can't believe Aaron finished my work. And so that last missing piece, because obviously we only have so much that is available to us on the planet. We know that we're more than a body, and no one's gone, oh, well, maybe the answer's in these other parts. And so I went into those other parts, and obviously we're where we are today because of it. And so as a basis, numerology now, I look at it as the blueprint of our each and every one of us divinity. It's how the creator of the universe, or whatever you believe in, or everything, the whole universe would see us. You know, we see that as something, but how does the universe see us? And when you have an understanding of that, it gives you another beautiful insight to our very, very lives here and what is possible. And because some things, everything's not great here on the earth, and there's still many more things and discoveries, and it's like there's more things to discover and more things to be healed than there are things. Well, there's nothing healed. I'm the first person to ever heal anything on the planet, and you can look throughout history, and then you can go to my website, you can get it, and then you can test it. First ever in the existence of human beings. And discovery-wise, knowing that means that you've got 95% of the discoveries yet to come. And you might look out at life from your very narrow view of a couple of generations and go, well, we'll never see that in our time, or never, this is way too off into the future. But it's really just about thinking about things differently. So it's quite funny. I'm talking about this in a property that I sit outside and do a bit of podcasting down here on the beach. A goat just walked past. I think it's a goat. Yeah, it's definitely a goat. I'm Greek. I know my goat. And so there's many a possibility, and when we just sort of think about these things differently. And I guess with the discoveries, I'll give you a bit of insight for it. And I don't have the resources, the money, or the how would I say, the background to go and discover them. But having seen a lot of things, I will share some things with you. Maybe you can become a billionaire. And we have a nanolipoid, which is something that is like a little magnetic thing that puts a little bubble around certain things in vaccines and things. Why can't we use that technology to make it isolate and put a bubble around the salt in salt water, and then get a magnet at high power and blow all the salt out of salt water and desalinate salt water? Water is going to be a big problem, but the biggest reserves of water is salt on the planet. There's one idea for you. Electricity, energy. Okay. Well, ancient times, there are many things and conductors and other way more advanced than what we're using at the moment. We all know how to get electricity through different things, running water, solar, wind farms, and all the rest of it. There's about 12 hotspots on the planet. These places where if you drill down, we don't want to go down more than 5-6 kilometers, because we're starting to mess with the plates and the integrity of the Earth's surfaces and stuff like that. But even if you go 2.5 kilometers down, you can get over 100 degrees, even up to 200 but in these maybe 12 spots around the Earth, you go down that far, you get 200 degrees. Now, that boils water, that can produce steam, that can produce energy. So you could get enough electricity made from these 12 hotspots all around the world from the natural temperature of the Earth to power the whole world quite easily. Here's another discovery. The area that I am looking into is obviously to do with, what I've said in other podcasts, is we have a list of unnatural things for a natural system, and we have a list of natural things. And when we realize that, the things that are natural is where it's at as far as naturally aligning and solving a lot of the problems we have with our health, everyone is going to be returning to a natural, okay? Whether it be products, toothpaste, washing detergent, it's all going to be a flip. We're all going to be looking for something natural. We're not going to be looking for more chemicals, more intensity. We're going to be looking for softer, more aligned and more natural things. And so therefore, it's not going to cost us more to buy organic food, because the demand is going to be so high that the foods with chemicals will still be really cheap because no one will want them. They'll actually be, deteriorating and so we'll be getting back to further natural. So if you wanted to become very, very wealthy and abundant over the next 5 to 10 years, start investing in things that get us back to natural. We also don't need as many supplements and compounds as we do now to interact to help us with our normal bodily functions, because what has been discovered, I guess, in my healing protocol is not really healing, it's a system restore. And so when you restore your system back to its highest optimum natural state, it does a lot of the things, and I'm talking about dozens of things, that you're presently going out and getting singular supplements and services for. And so when you realize you get your body into this good state and your brain regulates your body better, there's 20 different drugs wiped out. There's 20 supplements wiped out. There's services to do with those supplements and services wiped out. So it's more about a natural system restore, that naturally aligning, and that's where the future's going to come from. It's going to come from a more simpler place, and it's not a treatment as much as it is a system restore. So anything aligned with that is going to get that better. So if you then knew and you could study everything that I've ever done, and you would know that to get your body into these higher states, you need to almost have a brain diet. So then if you invested in natural things that fired that one receptor in your brain, which helps regulate your body, which means you don't need those 20 things, then that's where the gold is. That's where the money is. That's where the future is. And you're doing something really, really meaningful and really beautiful for the future, and getting and having an awesome amount of money to experience life and to do that. So I've just given you, 4 or 5, possibly 10 different ways to become a multimillionaire / billionaire in the next 5 or 10 years. You can't see it now. I know you have to have, you have to be an early adopter. You have to be someone that can, with a bit of foresight, that doesn't want to be bogged down by the world that they can see. Because at the moment you look out and the whole world and the system and everything that's been projected and put in front of you is part of the old system, which uses everything synthetic and unnatural to become rich. And so we're flipping the script moving forward. It's where we're cycling to. It's where we're moving. It's where we're going. And, there's going to be a lot of people that might have listened to this that are going to be kicking themselves. And it could be organic farm, fruit, veg, toothpaste, everything. And so all of those things are going to be higher and higher demand every year and out until it becomes the new norm. So, for anyone that does, want to look into their own numerology. I mean, numerology, there's enough information out there today to do your own numerology charts, to do your own, whether it be on the internet. There's thousands of resources, actually. And look, I've never, I've done 5,500 of them. I've never really charged. There's been a couple of stints or whatever, but when I've worked in a healing house for clients and things like that. But I've done it mainly for my study because, especially at the moment, I put a sign out here on the beach or on a path saying, numerology, free numerology readings, and a cross-section of the community sit down, and I understand where the collective consciousness is. I understand how many people are conspiracy theories out there, how many people know the truth, how many people are still quite asleep, how many people are curious. It gives me more insight to you by doing that than putting a sign and charging for it and taking money, which is more of a transactional sort of old world way of doing things. So numerology changed my life by just understanding myself a bit better. And we live in an expanding world, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast, because I actually enjoyed giving this one. I think that's another thing. When you speak on something that you are supremely qualified to speak on, or because you know so much about it, you've been doing it your whole life or whatever, you light up when you're talking about it. You know what I mean? You see it in all different people and all different subjects, but when it's their subject and when it's their thing, they light up, and you feel like, I feel that, you know, I've given you some great value there, and some things to think about moving forward with your life. So thank you very much. I really appreciate each and every one of you for listening. I'm really grateful, because this has been even a new journey for me, being able to articulate what I'm sharing. And that's only been the last maybe 6 months that I've been able to articulate it. If you go back and look at some of my early podcasts, it's a bit hit and miss there. I was learning, and the message is a lot calmer, a lot more well balanced and delivered these days. So thanks for coming along for the ride, and I hope that you can even take some of this gold and apply it to your own life and have a beautiful life with less challenges and more wins and more love and more better experiences, like we're all starting to emerge to. Ciao for now.